Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Corsair graphics card. Surely not. Well, if you didn't know, Corsair have teamed up with MSI and we've essentially got a Corsair AIO with a slightly custom shroud, because you can kind of buy your own brackets to fit AIOs to your graphics cards. Now the 980 980 Titan X, 970, 290 and 290X have all got brackets available for them. But this one actually comes with a graphics card pre-attached, or vice versa, however you want to swing, swings and roundabouts. But it's Corsair branded. It's slightly more special than the standard brackets that you can buy if you've already got a graphics card. And let's face it, comes in an amazing Corsair box like this. It's fitted for you. And it comes with a 3-year warranty. I've had a look online and Corsair are advertising it at £619 from what I've seen so far. And it does have a fairly healthy base clock as well. With the boost it's £12.91, but it's all stuff that I'm properly excited to get my teeth into. But really, I need to get my teeth into showing you what it looks like, don't I? So we've had to rejig ever so slightly because of it's a fairly big box, in all honesty. So don't give me grief about the professionalism of my videos and the surroundings when I've not asked you to pay towards them like other people have. Shots fired. Anyway, so that box is tight. That's what she said. Anyway, so right, box. And this is literally the first time I've seen it as well. So we will remove all the bits and bobs. Just a simple manual, getting started. It's all the stuff that as a qualified man I ignore. And by qualified I mean just being a man. Driver CD, we've got another user guide. But then when we break into the inside, we can see that we've got the AIO and the graphics card units. There we go, and we do have a cable down the bottom, which I always say please don't ever use, and we have some screws as well so that we can mount the cooler. But really, I need to move the camera again. Okay then peeps, so we've got it all out for us to have a look at. Now the first thing I want to bring to your attention, and I love it, if you've got a H100i GTX or the H110i GT, then you'll be familiar with the braided cables, and they've got them on this. Now the AIO on this is a H55. You may think to yourself, oh, it's too small for a graphics card, but you'll be surprised how well this card will respond to water cooling, even with such a small radiator. But the fact that we've got braided hoses on this as well, I properly like. Now I'm not going to pull it around too much, so we're going to have to zoom the camera in a little bit. But we do have a clear window here, and you can see the H55 AIO here. That's your cold plate in the pump area. Now this is very much like a standard NVIDIA fan at the back, and that's just to help keep the and that's like a very familiar sight with the back of the NVIDIA graphics cards as well. The actual shroud itself is plastic rather than metal on the NVIDIA, but the fan is to keep the memory, the MOSFETs and all the power delivery side of things happy. And then where most of the heat comes from is going to be the GPU core, and that is where the water cooling comes involved. So technically we should be able to drop the noise levels with this, but increase performance. With GPU Boost 2 as well, which is an NVIDIA kind of bit of software or technology, however you want to call it, it will, you get your boost clock, but then the GPU Boost 2 pushes the overclock then that little bit further depending on power loading and temperatures and the like. So we have the possibility, because of the water cooling, that either the GPU Boost 2 is literally going to really crank the nozzle up for us, or because of the water cooling we can then really drive the noise levels down, depending on how lucky you get with the core itself. As we can see here, got a little MSI logo on the side. it appears to be yellow as well. I'll be interested to see if that does light up yellow. I think maybe considering the rest of the card is quite monochrome and understated, that it might have been a little bit of a wiser tone to have used the white logo. But then when we come round to the back, where the back plate is, you can see Overclock series with the yellow branding in. So excuse me. So that's where the yellow side of things is going to come from. I have to admit though, when it comes to the MSI yellow branding, I find it a bit limiting, but there's not too much of it there, and you know, it really depends on the way that you've got your rig set up, whether you'll see it on the inside too much. But we do have a nice 980 tie bit of branding on the side there, and we can come in and show you the braid again. So it is a very sleek looking card. We've got a nice plain backplate, which is lovely. And then obviously we've got the, this bit is plastic, but the window I really like. If this was my card, I think I'd probably be looking to put an LED on the inside or something, maybe a maybe a white LED to help light up the inside a little bit more. I know it would be difficult to be able to see it in most scenarios, but just the fact that it was there would probably please me. Anyways, so we've seen it round the back, standard 980 tie. So we're going to have DisplayPort, HDMI, DisplayPort, and then you've got your DVI for those of you out there still on the older fitments. But it certainly looks the part. It's really time now to get it in and get it tested. So there we have the old girl fitted, and we can see here that the MSI logo on the side does light up yellow. I have a strange feeling though that would be customizable. If you were to pop the lid, you can actually sand the yellow off like you can with the original OEM Nvidia cards, because you can sand the green off. You just use a very light like fine grained sandpaper, and you can take that off. So that's just something to put out there. This is our GPU test rig. That's a Rampage 4 Black Edition there, and it's in a Corsair 760T, so it's a standard Corsair case that we're using as well. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but this is where some of the detail comes in. Okay, if we wanted to fit the graphics card as it come out of the box, this fan would have been on the other side, and it was blowing through, and it wouldn't have been able to have been fitted to the front because the hoses don't actually allow the radiator to be mounted to the front of the case. So all I've done is I've actually moved the fan around. So when you get it out the box, if you do buy one, just keep that in mind that you may have to jiggery-pokery the fan around. It will fit the front of the big cases if you want it to. I know a lot of people are now going to start to go, oh, but what about all the heat that comes in and all that type of stuff? You know, if you really want to get pedantic and anal about it, sure, you can. Obviously, you could have mounted it at the back, so it would be chucking all the hot air out the back. Now, that's totally up to you. But if you were to do that, there's a few things that you do need to keep in mind. And I'm just going to rejig the camera for you. Now, I've got the H100 GTX mounted in this case, and I've not changed the layout. This is how I built it when I first did the GPU test rig. So you can see that we've got the hoses up the top here, which are the matching braid, and it's absolutely lovely that it's like that. But we do have the hoses towards the back, and it was just the way that I thought that it looked best. But if we wanted to fit the Corsair into the back of this case, so we could get the heat just pummeling straight out the back, I would then have to switch the orientation so that the hoses came in the, finger in the fan, came the other way to be able for us to be able to do that. But then we would have a busy hosing area here. Now, and this is just something else that I do want to say, because it's something that's been brought up in the past, and I do just want to point it out. Now, we can see on the end of the radiators here that we have end tanks, because a lot of people seem to assume that in the roof of the case, because there's a 360mm set of fans in the roof, that we would be able to get the 240 from the H100 IDTX and the GPU radiator in there as well, but we can't. If you've got a 240mm radiator yourself, they have end tanks on the end as well. So that what that essentially means is, as you can see here, the fans need to sit absolutely smack bang next door to each other. So there's no way that we can have all of them. If you only had a H60 or a H55 and you had room in the roof, you could have them, and you have the end tanks on the inside and the outside. But when you try and have them going back to, you know, against each other that way, they won't work. So that's something that you would have to keep in mind as well. So even though I've got room for a 120mm fan up here, because of the end tank, I wouldn't be able to natively mount it. If you did want to get handy in the roof with your Dremel or something like that, you would be able to get it in. You would be able to get it in. But personally, if it was me building a rig, that would be how I would personally set it up. Cold air coming in from the front inside the case. If you were to have this running for an awful long time, you may see maybe 2 or 3 degrees difference on your CPU temps. And you know, if things are that critical for you because you live in a hot environment or something like that, fair enough. But I'm one of these people that I will build to be pretty rather than building to lose a degree or two somewhere. But it's totally down to you. I've given you the information. You get it in your rig how you would see fit and how you would think it would work best. Okay, so we're moving on now to do some temperature testing, and this is how I do my temperature testing. I also take screenshots of everything that I do, and this is how I store it. Also gives us the power usage of the rig, as you've seen already, and from the wall it's 484 watts. But anyway, the reason why we've got this all set out like this is with all of the graphics cards, and we've been doing it for quite a few years now. We use it with 0AA and 2560 by 1440, and that's how we do our temperature load test, because we can let Valley just go round and round and round, and we let it do it for about half an hour, 45 minutes. But then we can also, that gives us our load and it gives us a really good temperature reading, but it also gives us our GPU boost too, because out the box it's got 1190 megahertz GPU clock, as you can see there, and then the boost is 1291. But GPU Boost 2 will then overclock it that little bit further for you. And then we were getting 1400 megahertz out of the box, no changes whatsoever on that. And that's all because of the cooling. So it's absolutely happy as Larry, 1400 megahertz. And then you can see that we had a 56 degrees maximum temperature with that run. When we did that as well, I did 2 separate fan settings on the radiator. I did a 9-volt run and I did a 12-volt run. The 12-volt run with the fan that came with it really wasn't noisy at all, but 9-volt was nigh on silent. So this was the 9-volt run and we got 56 degrees. And then I did the 12-volt run, and then that dropped by 4 degrees down to 52 degrees. So 52 degrees, and that was, I literally did come out of the Unigine, take my screenshots and everything, turn the fan up, went straight back into it. Was also pre-warmed as well by the previous run, and it still dropped by 4 degrees. So the graphics card had probably had well over an hour's worth of punishment and still managed to get that 52 degrees as well. So we, like I said, the fact that we did the faster fan run afterwards as well, yeah, it was just brilliant. So there's your temperatures and your power usage, and as you can see, the temperatures were pretty crazy. Okay, same again, but we're on the overclocking side of things now. And again, I keep screenshots of everything. So if anyone ever argues and says, oh no, that can't be possibly right, I have validations of everything. But essentially from this is our 3D Mark Firestrike Ultra result. And we can see up here the afterburner settings, but we can see with the overclock that we were running, I upped the boost up 135 megahertz. We did crank up the memory by 300 megahertz as well. So that basically meant we were running a stock speed of 1325. Our memory went from 1774 up to 1924. And then the boost went from 1291 up to 1426. But then with 1426, the GPU Boost 2 then takes things even further for us. And that then left us with 1552.8 megahertz on that run. And you can see during the 3D Mark run as well, we only went up to 49 degrees. We did see with the overclock when we were doing Unigine runs, extended Unigine runs I might add, we were getting around 57, 58 degrees in total, and that was after doing all of the benching as well, because we always do the temperature runs right at the very end of all of the testing, so everything's very nice and warmed up and it's not kind of like played with in any way. We did actually amazingly notice that the temperatures didn't really make a huge amount of difference depending on whether you had the overclock running or not. The capabilities of water with graphics cards are absolutely spot on, and it's a perfect choice for a graphics card is water cooling. So it does manage to keep things cool and quiet. But anyway, we need to talk about some actual performance results now and show you some of these scores in some graphs. Oh my days, it's time for some graphs. Some pretty shocking graphs, I might say as well. Now I'm going to start with Firestrike Ultimate 4K. This is actually probably our most recent benchmark. It's actually pretty stressful as well. And you can see that when the graph comes up, we have an awful lot of results. But the overclocked Corsair just jumped to the top. And when you go further down, even the stock result is pretty much in there with the thick of some of the bigger cards as well. Now you need to remember, this hasn't got a crazy mental out of the box overclock. So actually it's better than the stock, it's better than the OEM by a small mile, but it's pretty middling out of the box. So for it to chuck in results that are significantly better than some of the other results that we've seen in the past, just goes to show you that the fact that the cooling then allows it to go, rather than some of them like 40, maybe 60 megahertz faster with the GPU Boost 2, this was then just yomping in over 100 megahertz straight away for you, and you were running a stock GPU at over 1400 megahertz without having to do anything. That speaks volumes here. Then obviously when we did manage to be able to overclock it, you can see how far up it's gone up the graphs and just gone past everything, including, quite surprisingly, the Asus Matrix card. When we go on to 3D Mark Firestrike, we've got Firestrike Extreme and Firestrike here. Sometimes, crazily, you can get something to pass Firestrike Ultimate, you go on to Firestrike Extreme and it'll fall over, as in it'll crash. This was actually still stable with that massive overclock. So the fact that I managed to do one run, yeah, that's okay, because when each time I overclock something, I have to do a few runs to make sure that we're going to do it, jump in a game, make sure it's not going to fall over, to make sure it's stable. So the overclock that I showed you was 100% stable as well, and these were the scores that it pumped up. And like I said, you can see here doing fairly well down, out of the box, but then as soon as you overclock it, boom, there it goes, top of the graph. It was the same with 3D Mark Vantage, apart from this time the stock result was above a significant amount of overclocked cards. And then once we did actually overclock it ourselves, boom, smash, top again. 3D Mark 11, same sort of thing. You can see it's midships on the graph and then right at the very top. Now you may be thinking to yourself, wah, it's not going to be like that when it comes to gaming, is it, Tom? There's no way it can be like that when it comes to gaming. Well, with Assassin's Creed Unity, no, you're right. They're pretty much both at the top anyway. Amazingly, the NVIDIA GTX980 Ti overclock seems to be a result to be beckoned with on this one. It's an absolutely stonking card, but again, you can see the amount of things that it's left in the dust. Alien Isolation, there's a bit of a gap between it, but you can see that it's above some of the overclocked cards, and then it jumps right to the top as well. I'm not going to read out every single one of these results, so please, if you are interested in these results, the card, all of the comparisons and everything like that, please click on the link, either the card that pops up at the top if you're on your mobile, or click the link for the annotation down that side if you're on your desktop, and go and have a look at the Overclock 3D website. If you see some cards that aren't in the graphs, the amount of results that we've got are now getting into triple figures. especially with some of the results, like 3D Mark Advantage that we've been running years, the graphs are enormous. So these are actually a snapshot of the top of the graphs, because that's where this card sits. If we dropped on so that we had, like, for argument's sake, 6, 770s in the bottom of the graphs and stuff like that, you'd end up scrolling for about 3 years before you actually got to the bottom of the graphs. So you should be thankful that we filter things out a little bit more for you. I know you may be thinking, oh, where does my 970 sit in this graph? Well, if that's the graph and you wanted to know where your 970 was, it wouldn't be here. It would be down here somewhere with the amount of results that we've got. So maybe we could kind of filter them out, but it would take us so much longer to do graphs each time that we literally just grab the top. But let's face it, if you're thinking about buying a 980, then you're going to want to compare it to the other stuff that's going to be performing around the same sort of ballpark. And most of the benchmarks that we use in these videos and reviews are available free anyway, so you could download them and compare it to your own stuff. Rant over, or not even a rant, information snippet over. And then when we move on again, we can see Far Cry 4. The only thing that the card is beaten by is the Asus 980 Ti Matrix, and you can see that we've got is Asus 980 Ti Matrix, and then we've got the Corsair Overclock and then the Corsair stock. So pretty good scores throughout. So I'm going to stick the results to the side, and I need to do my little getting into the middle. And you might wonder why I've moved, but this is the bit that it's easy for me to scan through when I'm making a video. I can see that I've changed position, and I now know that I need to get the reward logo to pop up. And to be honest with you, it's an undoubted gold award. Now, I want to clear a few things up, because this is going to be 619.99 GBP from the Corsair website, and you have to buy it from their web store. Now, this is not official from Corsair or anything like that. So this next bit is my personal thoughts on what's going on with this card, because the performance is eye-wateringly good. Now, there are going to be people shouting at the camera going, don't worry about it, Tom, it's just cherry-picked. They've cherry-picked your sample to make it sound amazing. That is perfectly possible. But I have a sneaking suspicion about what's going on with these cards and the fact that Corsair are working with MSI on it. Cherry-picked, yes. I don't think it's just my one, because I know that they're only selling these direct. So if you want the Corsair one, you have to get it direct, and I know that they are going to be in limited numbers as well. There isn't going to be hundreds and thousands of these cards. You know, when they're gone, they're gone. And I have a sneaking suspicion that every single one of the cards that goes in a Corsair box has been cherry-picked. And that is a very, very good thing. I mean, I can't say 100% because Corsair are not going to send me 20 of these cards to go through. The fact that there's only one of these in Europe at this present moment in time, and it came here first, should speak volumes about how tight they are being with the samples anyway. But I think, and I would be very surprised if they haven't cherry-picked the ones that they're going to sell as theirs, because they're not going to want big, wide ranges of scores. And I think that, you know, results in overclocking. So I have a sneaking suspicion that's what they're saying. If you want it, you've got to come and get it from us. And I would be very surprised if you didn't get something that was very, very close performance-wise, especially with that overclock to the card that I've reviewed today. Because if they are in such small numbers, that means they are going to be able to be a little bit picky about the ones that they do eventually choose. So that's just my perception about something, and I'm just putting that out there. It is pure speculation, but that's my gut feeling. I don't think that we would have got something like this picked out and then sent to the media, because really with something like this they would have wanted to make sure that it had gone to, you know, the end users and you guys as well. The OEM cards can be very, very good as well, because it's technically an OEM PCB underneath, and the original NVIDIA cards were brilliantly good. So adding that water cooling onto the top is where the strength comes from. So award-wise, absolute, before I go off onto another tangent, award-wise, undoubtedly a gold award. It is one of the more expensive GTX 980 Ti's, but you get the thermal performance is there, the temperatures are absolutely brilliant. well below 60 degrees, and I have had some that have been over 60 degrees. There's water cooling on them as well, so it's more than capable. I've shown you the results with a 9-volt fan and a 12-volt fan with the one that's attached. Didn't do any special trickery either. It was in a case. It was all, you know, as it should have been, really, as an end user would use it. So the thermals are absolutely brilliant. The fan that they've got on it, which they say is quieter, it is definitely quieter than the OEM NVIDIA one as well. I was actually quite impressed by that. If you were going to like overclock and like really overclock, then I was running between 60 and 65% on the fan for the extended bench runs, just to make sure that they were stable. But then when we went on to the thermal runs, it was left at stock and running at about 45%. But it was still stable throughout that. But sometimes I would turn the fan up just to make sure that if it falls over, it's not an unstable overclock. Sorry, it's an unstable overclock and nothing to do with temperatures sneaking up. It's maybe not something that we would suffer with too much on this, but it's anyway. So at the end of the day, you can have this thing running absolutely balls out with ridiculous temps and really quiet as well, which is a really strong thing to say. We've got the blower card on it as well, so any of that air from the MOSFETs and the memory cooling does go out the back of the case. If you are worried about adding heat into your case, you are going to have to get selective about where you fit the radiators. I have explained to you about end tanks as well if you have another AIO in your case. But personally, I think if you you may get into some problems with the hoses and stuff like that. If you get creative and don't just think, oh, I can't be bothered, and you actually spend some time making sure you tweak things, move things around, I would be very surprised if you can't get it looking at least remotely tidy. I personally would just, if it fits, get it to the front of your case, clip it in, keep it nice and simple, bish bash bosh, and it will perform like we had today. So essentially it really does look the part. The only thing that really niggles me is the yellow from the MSI. That's an MSI branding thing. MSI are kind of going through this kind of change at the moment where they've dropped the yellow on their motherboards. You can only get the yellow on the X99 board now. In the Z170 range they've dropped it and you've got that the titanium board. So I'm not sure where that branding kind of comes from. If you're a bit handy though, get some fine sandpaper out and you can get rid of the yellow on that light on the side. And to be honest with you, because I know this isn't staying, but if this was staying and I was going to end up using it, that would be the exact thing that I would be doing, is getting rid of that yellow. There's no way to turn the light off that I found either, because the GeForce Experience way didn't work with mine, or didn't work with this one anyway, but it, you know, it may have just been an early bug or something like that. It may get fixed, but anyway, so if you don't like the yellow, don't write it off because of that. If you're a bit handy with the tools, I would just get in there and get it changed anyway. So the long and short of it is, it's got lovely hose like the new AIOs have got. I loved that bit of detailing as well, because that makes it stand out from all the other cards as well. The yellow was the only real niggle. Everything else about it I quite liked. If you like the metal feel of the cooler that you get with the original GTX980 Ti, you may not like this because it is it's all, you know, mainly plastic. You've got metal at the bottom obviously, but all the top of it's plastic. But anyway, Gold Award. I've given you lots of ifs and buts, pluses, minuses, negatives, tried to feed you as much information as possible, giving you a bit of speculation as well. But the long and short of it is, performance wise with this card, out the box, 1400 megahertz, does phenomenally well considering the amount of other 980 Ti's that I've done. If you're willing to put some effort in with Afterburner and get busy with the overclock, then you're going to get some absolutely graph topping results from it. So they've done an absolute phenomenal job with this, and if I am right about them cherry picking the cards, it could well worth be buying one from the Corsair website and veering away from your standard kind of way of maybe going to Newegg or OC UK if you're in the UK, for argument's sake. But grabbing my what's it about me and results today? Remote. Grabbing my remote. Big thumbs up to Corsair for this one. It's taken a while, we've known about it for ages, but you've pulled out an absolute blinder. When honest to God, when I was graphing this up, I had to go back through a couple of the tests and make sure that they were absolutely spot on and we hadn't had balked runs because they were so good. So it's just a good job that I've always got screenshots to back everything up. Mind-blowing performance, absolutely loved it, and I want to keep it. Don't take it off of me. I know you're going to, but I don't want to. Anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you on the Gold Award winning Corsair Hydro GFX or graphics, but it's a GTX 980 Ti out.